Maybe I'm worried, Rick Deckard conjectured that what happened to Dave will happen to me, and Andy's smart enough to laser and could probably take me too. But that didn't seem to be it. I see you brought the poop sheet on the new brain unit, Inspector Bryant said, hanging up the vidphone. Rick said, yeah, I heard about it on the grapevine. How many Andys are involved, and how far did Dave get? 8 to start with, Bryant said, consulting his clipboard. Dave got the first 2, and the remaining 6 are here in Northern Carolina. As far as we know, if Dave thinks so, that was him I was talking to. I have his notes. They were in his desk. He says all he knows is here. Brian taped the bundle of papers. So far, he did not seem inclined to pass the notes on to Rick. For some reason, he continued to leaf through them, himself frowning and working his tongue in and around the fringes of his mouth. I have nothing on my agenda, Rick offered. I'm ready to take over in Dave's place. Bryant said thoughtfully. Dave used the Voight-Kampff altered scale in testing out the individuals he suspected. You realize to any uh, uh, you ought to anyhow that this test isn't specific for the new brain units. No test is. The Voight scale altered 3 years ago by Kampf is all we have. He paused, pondering. Dave considered it accurate. Maybe it is, but I would suggest this before you take out after these 6. Again, he tapped the pile of notes. Fly to Seattle and talk with the Rosen people. Have them supply you a representative sampling of types employing the new Nexus 6 unit, and put them through the Voight conflict said. It sounds so easy, Bryant said, half to himself. Pardon? Bryant said. I think I'll talk to the Rosen organization myself while you're on your way. He eyed Rick, then silently, finally he grunted, gnawed on a fingernail, and eventually decided on what he wanted to say. I'm going to discuss with them the possibility of including several humans, as well as their new androids, but you won't know. It'll be my decision. In conjunction with the manufacturers, it should be set up by the time you get there. He abruptly pointed at Rick, his face severe. This is the first time you'll be acting as a senior bounty hunter. Dave knows a lot. He got years of experience behind him. So have I, Rick said tensely. You've handled assignments devolving to you from Dave's schedule. He's always decided exactly which ones to turn over to you and which not to. But now you've got 6 that he intended to retire himself, one of which managed to get him first. This one, Bryant turned the notes around so that Rick could see. Max Polakov. Bryant said that's what he calls himself anyhow. Assuming Dave is right, everything is based on that assumption. This entire listing at the Voight-Kampff altered scale has only been administered to the first 3. The 2 Dave retired and then Polakov. It was while Dave was administering the test that when Polakov lasered him, which proves that Dave was right. Rick said otherwise he would not have been lasered. Polakov would have no motive. You get started for Seattle, Bryant said. Don't tell them first. I'll handle it. Listen, he rose to his feet, soberly confronted Rick. When you run the Voight-Kampff scale up there, if one of the humans fails to pass it, that can't happen, Rick said. One day, a few weeks ago, I talked with Dave about exactly that. He had been thinking along the same lines. I had a memo from the Soviet police, WPO, itself circulated throughout Earth plus the colonies. A group of psychiatrists in Leningrad have approached WPO with the following proposition. They want the latest and most accurate personality profile analytical tools used to determine the presence of an android. In other words, the Voight-Kampff scale applied to a carefully selected group of schizoid and schizophrenic human patients. Those specifically which reveal what's called the flattening effect. You've heard of that? Rick said. That's specifically what the scale measures. Then you understand what they're worried about. This problem has always existed since we first encountered androids posing as humans. The consensus of police opinion is known to you in Lurie Kampf's article, written 8 years ago, a role-taking blockage in the undeteriorated schizophrenic. Kampf compared the diminished emphatic facility found in human mental patients and is superficially similar but basically. The Leningrad psychiatrist Brian broke in brusquely. Think that's a small class of human beings that does not pass the Voight-Kampff scale. If you test them in line with police work, you assess them as humanoid robots. You'd be wrong, but then they'd be dead. He was silent now, waiting for Rick's answers. But these individuals, Rick said, would all be. They'd be institutions, Brian agreed. They couldn't conceivably function in the outside world. They certainly couldn't go undetected as advanced psychotics, unless, of course, their breakdown had come recently and suddenly, and no one had gotten around to noticing. But this could happen. A million to one odds, Rick said, but he saw the point. What worried Dave, Bryant continued, is this appearance of the new Nexus 6 advanced type. The Rosen organization assured us, that the Nexus 6 could be delin- delineated by standard profile tests. We took their word for it. Now we're forced, as we know we would be, to determine it on our own. That's what you'll be doing in Seattle. You understand, don't you, that this could go wrong either way. If you can't pick up all the humanoid robots, then we have no reliable analytical tool, and we'll never find the ones who are already escaping. In your scale factors that a human subject identifies him as android. Brian beamed at him icily. It would be awkward, although no one, absolutely not the Rose people, would make the news publicly. Actually, we'll be able to sit in on it indefinitely, although, of course, I will inform the WPO, and then in turn will notify Leningrad. Eventually it'll pop out of the pates at us, but then we have developed a better scale. He picked the phone up. You want to get started? Use a department car and fuel yourself up at the pumps. Standing, Rick said, Can I take Dave Holden's notes with me? I want to read them along the way. Brian said, Let's wait until you've tried out your scale in Seattle. His tone was interestingly merciless, and Rick Deckard noted it. When he landed, the police department hovercar on the roof of the Rosen Association building in Seattle, he found a young woman waiting for him, black-haired and slender, wearing the new, huge dust-filtering glasses. She approached his car, her hands deep in the pockets of her bright striped long coat. She had on her sharply defined small face an expression of sullen distaste. What's the matter? Rick said as he stepped from the parked car. The girl said obliquely, Oh, I don't know, something about the way we got talked to on the phone. It doesn't matter. Abruptly, she held out her hand. He reflexively took it. I'm Rachel Rosen. I guess you're Deckard. This is not my idea, he said. Yes, Inspector Bryan told us that, but you're officially San Francisco's police department's, and it doesn't believe our unit is to the public benefit. She eyed him from beneath the long black lashes, probably artificial. Rick said, A humanoid robot is like any other machine. It can fluctuate between being a benefit and a hazard very rapidly. As a benefit, it's not our problem. But a hazard, Rachel Rosa said, then you come in. Is it true, Mr. Deckard, that you're a bounty hunter? He shrugged with reluctance, nodded. You have no difficulty viewing an android as in there, the girl said. So you can't retire it, as they say. Do you have the group selected out for me? He said. I'd like to, he broke off, because all at once he had seen their animals. A powerful corporation, he realized, would of course be able to afford this. In the back of his mind, evidently, he had anticipated such a collection. It was not surprise that he felt, but more a sort of yearning. He quietly walked away from the girl toward the closest pen. Already he could smell them, the several scents of creatures standing or sitting, or in the case what happened to be a raccoon asleep. Never in his life had he personally seen a raccoon. He knew the animal from only the 3D films shown on television. For some reason, the dust had struck the species almost as hard as it had the birds, of which almost none survived. In automatic response, he brought out his much-slimmed Sydneys and looked at the raccoon with all the sublistings. The list prices naturally appeared in italics, like the Persian and horse. None existed on the market for sale at any figure. Sydney's catalog simply listed the price at which the last transaction involving a raccoon had taken place. It was astronomical. His name is Bill, the girl said from behind him. Bill the raccoon. We acquired him just last year from a subsidiary corporation. She pointed past him, and he then perceived the armed company guards standing with their machine guns, the rapid-fire little light. Skoda issue. The eyes of the guards had been fastened on him since his car landed, and he thought my car is clearly marked as a police vehicle. A major manufacturer of androids, he said thoughtfully, invests its surplus capital in living animals. Look at the owl, Rachel Rosen said. Here, I'll wake it up for you. She started toward a small, distant cage, in the center of which jutted up a branching dead tree. There are no owls, he started to say, or so we've been told. Sydney's, he thought they listened to the catalog as extinct, the tiny, precise type, the E again, and throughout the catalog as the girl walked ahead of him. He checked to see, and he was right. Sydney's never makes a mistake, he said to himself. We know that too. What else can we depend on? It's artificial, she said. With sudden realization, his disappointment welled up keen and intense. No, she smiled, and he saw that she had small, even teeth, as white as her eyes, and hair were black. But Sydney's listing said, trying to show her to prove it to her. The girl said, We don't buy from Sydney's or from any animal dealer. All our purchases are from private parties. And the prices we pay aren't reported, she added. Also, we have our own naturalists. They're now working up in Canada. There's still a good deal of forest left, comparatively speaking. However, or anyhow, enough for small animals and once in a while a bird. For a long time he stood gazing at Al, who dozed on his perch. A thousand a thousand thoughts came into his mind, thoughts about the war, about the days when owls had fallen from the sky. He remembered how in his childhood it had been discovered that species upon species had become extinct, and how the papers had reported it in each day. Foxes one morning, badgers the next, until people had stopped reading the perpetual animal obits. He thought, too, about his need for a real animal with him and the actual hatred once more manifested itself toward his electric sheep, which he had to tend, had to care about it as if it lived. The tyranny of an object, he thought. It doesn't know I exist like the androids. It had no ability to appreciate the existence of another. He had never thought of this before, the similarity between an electric animal and an Andy. The electric animal, he pondered, could be considered a sub-form of other kind of vastly inferior robot, or conversely, the android could be regarded as a highly evolved version of the Earth's animal. Both viewpoints repelled him. If you sold your Al, he said to the girl, Rachel Rosen, how much would you want for it, and how much of that down? We would never sell our Al. She scrutinized him with a mixture of pleasure and pity, or so she read her expression, and even if we sold it, you couldn't possibly pay the price. What kind of animal do you have at home? A sheep, he said. A black-faced Suffolk ewe? Well, then you should be happy. I'm happy, answered, just that I always wanted an Al. Even back before they all dropped dead, he corrected himself, all but yours. Rachel said, our present crash program and overall planning call for us to obtain an additional owl which can mate with Scrappy. She indicated the owl dozing on its perch, and it briefly opened both eyes. Yellow slitch which healed over as the owl settled back down to resume its slumber. Its chest rose conspicuously and fell as if the owl in its hypnagogic state had sighed. Breaking away from the sight, it made absolute bitterness blend throughout his prior reaction of awe and yearning. He said, I'd like to test out the selection now. Can we go downstairs? My uncle took the call from your superior by now. He probably has. You're a family? Rich broke in. A corporation this large is a family affair? Continuing her sentence, Rachel said, Uncle Alden should have an android group and a control group set up by now, so let's go. She strode toward the elevator, hands thrust violently in the pockets of her coat. She did not look back, and he hesitated for a moment, feeling annoyance, before he at last trailed after her. What have you got against me? He asked her, as together they descended. She reflected as if up to now she hadn't known. Well, she said, you, a little police department employee, are in a unique position. Know what I mean? She gave him a malice-filled sidelong glance. How much of your current output, he asked, consists of types equipped with the Nexus 6? All, Rachel said. I'm sure the Void Comp scale will work with them, and if it doesn't, we'll have to withdraw all Nexus 6 types from the market. Her black eyes flamed up. She glowered at him as the elevator ceased ascending and its doors slid back. Because you police departments can't do an adequate job in simple matter of detecting the minuscule number of Nexus 6 who balk, a man, dapper and lean and elderly, approached them, hand extended. On his face, a harried expression showed. As if everything recently had begun happening too fast. I'm Alden Rosen, he explained to Rick as they shook hands. Listen, Decker, do you realize we don't manufacture anything around Earth, right? We can't just phone down to production and ask for a diverse flocks of items. It's not that we don't want or intend to cooperate with you. Anyhow, I've done the best I can. His left hand shakily roved through his thingy hair, indicate his department briefcase. Rick said, I'm ready to start. Senior Rosen's nervousness buoyed up his own confidence. They're afraid of me, he realized with a start, Rachel Rosen included. I can probably force them to abandon manufacture their Nexus Type 6 types. What I do during the next hour will affect the structure of their operations.